It is
Yeah.
very possible that in the state of Alabama and in the United States writ large, we're going to start to see policies and laws implemented that find another way to have a Jim Crow kind of effect. It's probably not going to be a gross, direct manifestation of Jim Crow, but the end result, the impact it's going to have on communities of color, specifically black people, but other communities of color as well, I think is going to be the same as if it were a brazen attempt to implement Jim Crow.
Alrighty, welcome in. It's your favorite political podcast. It is Alabama Politics This Week with Josh Moon and
David Person.
How are you, David?
Man, I'm trying to keep a smile on my face, even though with one of the issues we're going to talk about today, I just, I don't want to preempt our conversation. I'll just say it's a struggle today. It's a struggle today.
It is. Yeah, we're recording on Wednesday, and if you'll look back to what Wednesday held, you'll understand what he's talking about. So, and it's not like it's going to be a surprise. We're going to tell you about it in a few minutes. Before we get though into that, let me tell you about our friends over at Wind Creek Entertainment who help this podcast go round and round and help us do what we do here, and we really do appreciate them. They operate 3 fantastic resort casinos in this state. The 2 crown jewels being in Atmore and Wetumpka. I rode by the one in Atmore this weekend. We actually were booked up to stay, and we're going to also go to Owa, the water park that the Porch Creeks operate down there, because let me tell you, I've taken my daughter one time and she loves it, and every time we pass that place, it is all I can do to keep her in the car. As it turned out, we had a little issue with a stomach bug, so we had to roll on past, and so she's now gotten promised a return trip down, and so we'll make that happen and get down there, because we really do love it, and we love staying at the resort down there. Listen, I know people think that it's not a kid friendly place. It absolutely is a kid friendly place. They've got it at Atmore. If you're headed down to the beach and you're going to stop, they've got an arcade. They've got a fantastic resort pool outside. It is awesome. You're not going to beat it anywhere. There's all sorts of amenities. There's food galore for the kids to eat. There's all sorts of stuff for the parents to do while they're there, even if you're not going to gamble. But if you are going to gamble, they got great games and stuff around there as well too. Yeah. Go check them out. I'm telling you, look them up at Wind Creek Entertainment online. You will not regret booking a stay and going down and hanging out with them. It's hospitality just like you don't find anywhere else, really.
And let me just tag on to say, as somebody who really does not gamble. I mean, I think I've gambled maybe 3 times in my life, if that,
Right.
I have had a great time at both the Atmore location and at the Wetumpka location. Yeah, those are great hotels. They're great places to just hang out. You don't have to gamble, but if you choose to, it's like Josh said, it's there in abundance. But there's plenty of other stuff to do, and there are plenty of great amenities to make it a great stay. So do it.
Right. It is. It absolutely is. And you know what? They're good people. They're good people doing good things and trying desperately to be good neighbors in this state. And they have, I think they fulfilled that in a lot of ways. So go check them out, and you won't regret it. Okay. So the Roberts Court has cemented itself as the ultimate underminer of racial equality in voting, and they have now completed basically their task of dismantling the Voting Rights Act. Wednesday's decision, as today, is for us. We came down just a little while ago, actually, and so we're still reading the first bits and takes on the thing. And it's comical to hear them say that we're going to respect the Voting Rights Act, and we're not completely killing it, but it's we're just going to take out all the provisions that meant anything to anybody, and did these things. And so and this is based around a Louisiana case, and the the idea being that it's unconstitutional to racially gerrymander a voting district. And Louisiana, like many states, have drawn districts that provided black voters, minority voters, an opportunity to elect a candidate of their choosing. They have carved out specific districts in which they should do this specifically because other districts, like for example in Alabama, where we had Congressional District 2 in this state that was created after the federal courts ruled that we had unfairly gerrymandered for white folks. And because we had more than 25% of our population were black, and yet our congressional representation was stuck at 1 out of 7. And we knew that those numbers were only the percentage of minority voters was only going to grow over the next 10 years. And that's how you do these things when it comes to redistricting, typically, until the Trump era, when we just do them whenever in the hell we want to now, just to try to win seats, because you're about to get whitewashed because your policies are so damn awful that everybody's going to crush you. And so you're trying desperately to pick your voters instead of the voters picking their representatives. But typically what has happened is every 10 years with a census, when the U.S. Census comes around, that's how they take the populations at different areas and they draw out voting districts. And there's a baseline of the way that they do these things. They try to keep counties together. They try to keep communities of interest together. They have certain benchmarks that they try to meet in doing this. And also, they try to make the representation roughly equal to the makeup of the population, whatever that may be in terms of demographics. And that's what we did here in this state. And so now I'm assuming Congressional District 2 is going to be determined as a racially gerrymandered district because, and we're going to allow the state of Alabama, the Republicans who run this thing, to redraw it. And kill off the second black representative from this state. And I don't, it's kind of all, hand in hand with what the Trump administration has done in terms of civil rights in general, and in flipping, kind of trying to flip racism on their head and make it seem as though white people have somehow suffered some injustice by equality being forced upon them.
Right.
And it just, it is disgusting to me as a white male. And so I'll shut up now and let you tell me.
Yeah, well, I think, the very idea that that there's some gross injustice being perpetuated by, what we've got here in Alabama with 2 out of 7 congressional representatives, 2 are black. The idea that is somehow has created some kind of gross injustice is just laughable. And I think the reality is, as you've alluded to, Josh, is that there's been a concerted effort on the part of this administration and this Supreme Court, even before this administration, to try to suggest that an absence of white supremacy is equivalent to bigotry against white people.
Yes.
Which is another way of saying we're supposed to be on top. We're supposed to be running things. We're supposed to have the advantage naturally. And if we don't have that, then something has gone wrong. Some kind of injustice has occurred because this is what we are entitled to. That's the message we've been getting from this administration. It's the message we've been getting from this Supreme Court. With over the past, since there's been a conservative majority, and I'm going to say, as a black man, one of the sad ironies is that one of the perpetuators of this line of thought is a black man on the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas. He's one of the ones who has been championing this line of thought, and I think it is profoundly disappointing and disturbing to think that this is the way he thinks. And I mean, we've known it for a while, so it's not a shock. But every time I see a manifestation of it, it just continues to blow me away. So those folks who follow this podcast know that periodically when we have had Black Alabama legislators on the podcast, I have asked them, do you think in this state that based on the politics, based on the trends of the policies that are being enacted through legislation, do you think we are moving backwards toward a Jim Crow? And several of them have said yes. And the first time it happened, I'll admit, I was a little surprised that they were so quick to say yes. But they were, and subsequent guests have done the same thing. And I think now we see in a much more concrete way that from, as Josh suggested, from Shelby County to now, we actually are. It is very possible. And in the state of Alabama and in the United States writ large, we're going to start to see policies and laws implemented that find another way to have a Jim Crow kind of effect. It's probably not going to be a gross, direct manifestation of Jim Crow, but the end result, the impact it's going to have on communities of color, specifically Black people, but other communities of color as well, I think is going to be the same as if it were a brazen attempt to implement Jim Crow.
I do not disagree. No, it is.
Scary.
It is. And you know, I think what is kind of, I think the most disappointing to me is that we are living in a time of such extreme, profound, and proud ignorance. And that, I mean that. I mean that in the literal sense. People, I mean, listen, for our Supreme Court to write the opinion that they did, and I want you to think about this. All right. So what we're essentially saying here is, Louisiana went down, recognized that there was a gerrymandering problem because they did not have another minority majority district, voting district. Okay. And so they solved that problem by taking those maps and making them fair and more representative of the population as a whole. And what our Supreme Court has said is that the original problem is not the problem, but the solution is the problem. The solution is what's unfair in America, not the problem that we had before, where you have systematically disenfranchised thousands and thousands and thousands of minority voters because they've been gerrymandered into districts in which they do not get to choose. No matter what happens, they can't. No matter if they all band together and decide they want to vote for who X, Y, or Z, it doesn't matter because they're outnumbered to such a degree by these maps that have been created that they're never going to have the candidate of their choosing. And so, therefore, you've essentially silenced them. Their vote does not matter. And the Supreme Court didn't have a problem with that bullshit, but they've got a problem with the solution being that we're going to fix that by correcting the maps to make them more representative of the population.
So another way of saying it is, it would be better that you remain disenfranchised.
Yes.
Than for the problem to be corrected. If we've got to choose between the two, Black people in Louisiana and unfortunately, probably in the near future, Black people in Alabama, it would be better that you be disenfranchised than that we correct the issue of you being disenfranchised.
Right. 1,000%. 1,000%. And, you know, I read some Elena Kagan's dissent, and you know, and it was harsh as it should have been, not as harsh as Ruth Bader Ginsburg's would have been, or cutting as hers would have probably been. But it was still, it was effectively harsh as it should have been. It effectively put them in their place. It effectively described to them what their legacy as a court is going to be. what John Roberts' legacy as a court is going to be. And that's what it's going to be. We're going to look back at this in 30, 40 years, and it's going to be, this court is going to be thought of as some of the more egregious courts out there, because I still say that, to me, the biggest example of the ignorance that dominates our thinking now can be found in the way that we approach college entrance stuff, and the outrage that there has been over affirmative action and allowing in certain minority groups, and making sure that you hit certain benchmarks in terms of minority groups to effectively have inclusivity and a diverse campus. And the outrage and the talking about the unfairness of that among white people. All right. And I think this permeates everything that we're doing here, because I've often said to people, oh, it's unfair. Oh, well, let me ask you this. When does the unfairness start? Okay. Does the unfairness just start because a black kid or a Hispanic kid or an Asian kid got into college at Auburn, let's say, instead of a white kid who had a slightly better grade point average and did a little better on the standardized tests that he was given? Is that the unfairness? Or what did it start at birth? When that kid grew up in a neighborhood that didn't have high-speed internet, that went to a public school that did not offer some of the advanced courses that would have trained him better to achieve at a higher level as they went through, but still made great grades, still went through everything, or was it when he didn't have the tutors? When he didn't have the tutors in high school to help him through this? Or was it when he couldn't afford to get the help and the practice tests for those standardized tests that you did so well on, and that you paid to take, multiple times, where he only took them once? Where was the unfairness? Where did that start? Because if we're all starting from the same starting line, then I got to tell you, I think that kid might have blown your ass away. But we don't know, because we didn't start at the same starting line. You started way the hell up here. And what they've done is allowed for a couple of those folks who have had basically chains tied around them as they're trying to run the same race. They're allowing them to have an opportunity. You've got plenty of others. You've got plenty of other opportunities. And that's the same thing that's happening right here, is this idea that there's some unfairness because they've come in and said, hey, look, we're going to give the minority folks in these districts an opportunity to elect somebody, and we're going to have a representation that better reflects our demographics in this state. And somehow that's the problem, not the fact that it's not representative of them, that they've been disenfranchised. That's the problem. Well, it's just the stupidest of times, man.
Well, it's symptomatic, I think, of what Americans, white Americans in general, not all, but white Americans in general, and a handful of black Americans also, and other Americans of other racial and ethnic backgrounds have done, and that is to really be in deep denial about the history of this country and what the history of this country has created, the legacy advantage that it has created for white people generally and white men in particular, so that, we forget, because it's not probably taught enough in schools. And of course, there's an attack now on the history being taught, the full history being taught. We forget about redlining. We forget about the innate discrimination that was in the GI Bill, where black soldiers and sailors coming back from war in World War II weren't given the same advantages and opportunities that white ones were. We forget about convict leasing. We forget about the systematic use of lynchings and rapes to subjugate and terrorize black people in this country, in the early 20th century and in the late 19th century and throughout the 19th century, actually. We forget about all of that stuff, and of course, slavery. People are still trying to this very day, you still have people like that Christian nationalist pastor Doug Wilson out in Idaho, I think that's where he is, Idaho, that are still trying to romanticize slavery. You know, the people that are still trying to romanticize the Confederacy in this state, you know,
just had
and what the
Confederate Memorial
Confederacy.
Day.
Exactly.
You know?
We still have that. We still celebrate that as a state. It's still a state holiday. Instead of acknowledging the reality that, in the words of one of the founders of the Confederacy, that the reason for its existence was to subjugate black people, to keep black people enslaved. We forget about that. It's not discussed. And so then you have, you know, people that come along like John Roberts and Donald Trump and Samuel Alito and others who, you know, operate off of this sense of entitlement, you know, when it comes to what advantages white people should have and what advantages black people and other people of other races and ethnicities shouldn't have.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, and I wanted to say too, you brought up Clarence Thomas, and Clarence Thomas is just a crook. I mean, it's all. I mean, we know this now. We know that he is absolutely as crooked as anybody has ever been in our government or at any level. If a circuit court judge in Jefferson County took the amount of money from people that he has taken to do some certain things, they would have been brought up on ethics charges, and all sorts of things would have happened by now. But you know, and so
he and John
I think,
Roberts are neck and neck, though. He and John Roberts are neck and neck because of what John Roberts has done through his wife and her employment.
That's right.
Yeah, they're neck and neck.
That's right. And it's just, you know, it is. It just, it's so regressive. That's, you know, I feel like the majority of Americans, certainly not all. I know where we live, you know, and I know what we're surrounded with a lot of times. But I feel like from the 1960s, for a good chunk moving forward there, that the majority of Americans took some pride in progressing forward with, you know, with what was happening in this country, you know, in terms of equality, in terms of, you know, these things were celebrated, and the idea is that equality and that we were doing better and that we were treating each other better was celebrated by the majority of Americans, by the majority, and you know, I feel like you know, it was probably Barack Obama's presidency that ended that, and it not anything he did. Don't get me wrong, because I mean, let's come on, you know what I'm saying? You know, it's is my favorite. You know, he's absolutely my favorite. I think he was the greatest, one of the greatest inspirations in this country's history. And you know, to hear the way that he is talked about now by people who back the dipshit in the White House, it is just atrocious. But you know, it seemed like because we had a black president, it gave the opportunity for so many far right racist morons to supplant in people's heads that we've gone too far. We've gone, now look, you know, and they, you know, you heard, there's the Obama phones, and he was giving out welfare to all of his black friends, and they're taking from white people and giving, you know, and it was all the doings of a certain group of people, starting at, you know, starting at Fox News with the biggest bullhorn out there. It was just yelling this nonsense, and then it led to Trump. Yeah. You know, it led to what we're experiencing now, and this great regression in civil rights. And in voting rights, and, you know, and it affects everybody. And that's what I just wish people could understand, you know, man, this isn't, when they do something to minority voters, that's not helping you, the white working guy out there. It's not helping you at all, because you got more in common with those folks than you got in common with anybody who's trying to pull this shit off. All right. You got way more in common with them, and you should be pulling for that because you're a decent human, you know? And I mean, it just, it's so disappointing to watch so many people get caught up in this, and, you know, and and be okay with it and celebrate it because they have effectively divided everybody into teams. And because you believe now that this is better for your team, which I don't, how could it be better for your team? I mean, you just think about the president with gun violence raging across the country. Okay. And the one guy broke into where the correspondence dinner was, and the solution is not more mental health money, more gun safety, more laws, more regulations on gun purchases or background checks or red flag laws. It's to build a ballroom to protect the rich people.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
I know we've got our guest holding for us, but I just want to say one quick thing. The team is supposed to be, what we've always been told is that the team is supposed to be America, all of us as Americans. And yet we have, as you suggested, we have allowed an ilk of leadership to emerge that does not see all of us as Americans. They divide us up based on everything from partisanship to race and ethnicity, to sexual identity and religion. It's all about division, and it's antithetical to everything that I know I certainly was not only taught, but to what right-wing conservatives used to push on the rest of us. Hey, we're all Americans. We're not Black Americans. We're not Muslim Americans. We're Americans. Well, not anymore.
No.
Thanks to the current leadership in this country, not anymore.
No, and it really is a real shame to watch so many people get caught up in this, and to be okay with it. And it's disappointing on so many levels, and really, to me, the most disappointing part of it is that we're just not smart enough to see the con. That so many people are just not smart enough to see this con, and that's all that it is. It's look, this I'm gonna say it's too, because it would be so easy. It would be so easy for the Republican Party to attract a majority of Black voters. It would be so easy to do that because so many Black voters are very conservative people. They're very conservative people in their beliefs, in their religious beliefs, even in a lot of their economic beliefs. They're very conservative-minded folks. But they get lost because the Republican Party simply refuses to change its stance on so many racial issues. And they continue to want to attract these racists. And that, I mean, you see it. You see the commercials now. I mean, it's dumbass Jay Mitchell out here, old hand lotion Jay, out here talking about strapping illegals into a chair and blasting them off into the whatever he's talking, and
But why did you call him hand lotion Jay? I don't
because
know.
He keeps trying to do this. I'm this tough guy, Jay Mitchell, and I mean, he looks like a guy who would give you some good hand lotion tips. I'm just, you know what I'm saying? I mean, come on, that dude's soft as all get.
Because his hands are soft.
Yeah,
because his hands are soft. That's what you mean.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, man, that man's got some Hispanic guys doing his yard work. Come on. I mean, it's just funny. Saying it is, I just get so irritated by that, and it just, anyways. All right, we're going to get out of here. We're going to come back and get Benard Simelton in, and talk to him about what has gone down with the Voting Rights Act. And I can only imagine what he feels. And so we'll hear from him in just a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. We're back in a moment.
In District 82, our families work hard, and we want our children to have the opportunities we didn't always have. Representative Pebblin Warren fought to increase funding for Tuskegee University from $4 million to over $20 million. She helped bring high-paying jobs to our district so families can build a future right here at home. She secured funding for roads that connect our communities. And when COVID hit, she helped families get unemployment and the support they needed to make it through. Because for Pebblin Warren, this work is personal. Let's send Pebblin Warren back to the State House to keep fighting for us.
All righty, welcome back. It's Alabama Politics This Week with Josh Moon, David Person, and we are happy now. Wish it was under better circumstances, but we are so happy to have with us the past president of the NAACP of Alabama, Benard Simelton. Mr. Simelton, how are you?
Well, I've seen better days, but we're going to get through this, and I'm doing okay. Just
Yeah.
devastating blow from the Supreme Court today.
Yeah, and I guess that's probably the best way to start here, and is to just I would just like for somebody like you, devoted your life to equality issues, to voting rights issues, to all of this. What this decision from the Supreme Court, kind of gutting some of the last real protections of the Voting Rights Act. How do you feel? What does it? Yeah, I mean, I guess does it lead you to more fighting, or does it just disappoint you?
Well, it certainly disappoints us, but it certainly, we're going to find ways to work around this, because the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the whole purpose of that was to give blacks an opportunity to have a voice, and who they sent to Congress, who they sent to the city council, election overall. And of course, everyone knows that the Voting Rights Act of 65 came out of Selma, Alabama. And so each year, each election cycle, there are attempts to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to have their voices heard. And for African American blacks and other minorities, states like Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, and many other states have gerrymandered the districts and either cracked all the black voters, or either packed them all into one district where they would not have voting strength overall based on the numbers. And so I think what we're seeing in this case is the Supreme Court, I think they got it wrong. And certainly that's Benard Simelton's opinion, but I think there are a lot of people out there would agree with me, and this will weaken African Americans' opportunity to select a candidate of their choice to send to Congress or any other elected position.
Yeah, I don't know that. I just flat out say it's wrong. It's wrong, and I don't have to qualify it as my opinion or anything else. I think it's wrong, and any level-headed person looking at it would think it's wrong. I mean, all we've got to do is look at a place like Jefferson County, where the majority of the population is minority, is the majority of the population in Jefferson County, and yet somehow or another, the legislative delegation for Jefferson County is white. Is ruled by white Republicans. That they have the advantage. The only way you can do that is by racially gerrymandering those districts. That's the only way you can do it. And yet we have determined that that's okay. But God forbid a state like Louisiana or Alabama, which had to do this as well in Congressional District 2, that is now represented by Shamari Figures, God forbid we come in and correct these things. And it to me, it's the height of stupidity and the height of ignorance to say to somebody that the problem's not the problem, the solution is.
Yeah. And certainly the Jefferson County case, there is a Jefferson County case, and I don't want to talk about that because that's in the midst of litigation now, as well as a Madison County case that's still under litigation. And I'm not here to speak on behalf of the NAACP, but the NAACP is a plaintiff in each of those cases. And so I don't want to say too much about those, but you're correct in saying that, when you have a racial majority in a confined district or space, they should be able to elect the person that they want to send to Congress or anywhere else. But again, with those being in power and authority, what they do is they look at the map, and this has been proven with the state of Alabama in the state legislative seats, they go through, and when they doing their after the census, they do their redistricting plan. They look at how they can ensure that the majority of the votes or the seats are maintained by whites. And Voting Rights Act, especially Section 2, was an opportunity to ensure that blacks were equally represented. Now, we also need to look at Section 4 and Section 5 under the Voting Rights Act, which, of course, we know that was struck down with the Shelby versus Holder case. And in pre-clearance, they no longer have to go, states or jurisdiction, I would say, don't have to go through the federal courts to get a pre-clearance or a ruling from the court to make sure that they are not, doing anything nefarious to gerrymander to prevent blacks from voting. And so with this Section 2, I mean, it takes all the teeth out of the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Bernard, there are a couple of words that come to mind when I think about this whole issue. One is history. History is important because history shows us that this idea of trying to take corrective action to create, equality when it comes to voting rights is absolutely necessary, because history shows us that black people not only were not being represented by the candidates of their choice historically in this country, but black people weren't being elected to office. And I see those as two separate but interlocking issues. The first issue is the more obvious one that we talk about a lot, which is, as Josh just said, and you just said, Jefferson County is a predominantly black county, but you've got white representation, congressionally speaking. Okay, so that's number one. But the other side of this is it's really about black people being able to choose, especially when they're in majorities or near majorities, being able to have a voice in who represents them. And that person can be black or white. In fact, I would argue that black people have much more experience voting for white candidates, putting white candidates in office, than white people have in putting black candidates in office. We are very accustomed to voting for white people. We are very accustomed to supporting white candidates. So for us, it's not just a matter of skin color, or ancestry or ethnicity. It's about representation, ideologically speaking, politically speaking, from a policy standpoint. It's about representation. Now, the other thing and so these are the two things that come to mind to me: history and representation. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, David, you're absolutely correct. History tells us what has happened in the past, and the way that, in this case, when we're talking about voting, the way that people have voted in the past, and certainly, in order to have your voices heard, you have to have someone that's going to represent you in, again, this can be a city council seat, state legislature, or congressional seats. You want to be able to, when you go to the poll, you want to think that your voice is going to be heard. You may not win, but your voice has an equal opportunity as anyone else as being heard and electing the person that you want to send to whatever political office it is. again, with this being said, what the Supreme Court is doing is really giving states, the authority to say, okay, we're going to maybe create one black district and say, well, we give that to African Americans, but not kind of based on looking at the total population of Alabama or any other states. And that's what we looked at in the state of Alabama. The total voting, black voting population in Alabama is is the total population around 27, 28% black. And, you look at that and say, well, yeah, you should have 2 to 3 out of the 7 congressional seats.
Mhm.
But, you also look at, again, they look at gerrymandering, making sure that in order to create that seat, you don't have to gerrymander. You don't have to, go from, say, from Madison over to Florence somewhere to get enough representation to, elect the person of your choice, because each seat has to have a certain number of votes. I think it's around 250, 270,000 for congressional seats, that the number of voters that it has to be. And so when you look at that, you look at even smaller jurisdictions such as city council and how they have gerrymandered those and just diluted the black vote, either by, again, packing them all into one district or cracking them, and where they would not have any collective voting power. And so those are the things that this decision will impact and has impacted. And because we thinking that Louisiana going to do something to try and get that seat overturned. And let me also I'll say that the state of Alabama, and not trying to put any ideas in their head, but, with the figures seat, I'm quite sure the state of Alabama is going to be looking at that.
Oh, we know they are. We know they are. I mean, that's a foregone conclusion that it's going to be attacked. Now, let me ask you this. Speaking of that, I know you're no longer the president of the Alabama chapter of the NAACP, but let me ask you, what do you think the NAACP and other civil rights organizations and other just, people who are activists who care about this, what can we do? What recourse do we have now with this undermining of the Voting Rights Act? What can we do?
Yeah. Well, certainly one of the things that we need to do is get out and vote, and I'm not saying getting out and vote is going to overturn this type of decision, but we need to elect people that will represent us at the state level and at the city level and county level, that's going to represent us. And those individuals are responsible for making decisions as to, when it comes to redistricting, those are the individuals that's going to make the decision as to how many districts, where the lines are going to be drawn based on population and everything. And so we need to have level-minded people in those positions. And also we need to fight for things like, early voting in Alabama, to give more people an opportunity to vote. No excuse absentee balloting, curbside voting, all these things that will help to increase voter turnout. That's why it's important to vote, so that we can have laws that will level the playing field. Because right now, all these laws that we have are against, blacks and other minorities from getting elected to positions. And so voting is
Well,
one. And the other
yeah,
thing is that we
yeah.
need to educate ourselves on the impact this is going to have on me as an individual. Things like benefits, whether it's SNAP or whether it's education,
Mhm.
all those things is made by someone who's voting either for or against them. And while blacks may not be able to elect their particular person, they may be able to have enough votes to, I guess, elect the worst, the least of the two evils.
Right. Well, hey, listen, Mr. Simelton, it's always a pleasure. Like I said when we started, I wish it was under better circumstances,
Yeah.
but we sure do appreciate you coming on, spending some time with us today, and for all the work that you've done. And I know all the
Yes.
work that you're going to do from here on out. We really do appreciate you.
Mhm.